Welcome to Peacebuilding Initiatives, where we explore the transformative power of dialogue, cross-cultural understanding, and the collective empathy in building more peaceful and connected communities. I'm your host, José Barzola. Thank you for joining us today. In this episode, we're delving into a topic that sits at the intersection of global education, sustainable development, and community reintegration. We're exploring the impact of educational exchange experiences on international students' reintegration process into their home countries. I'm honored to be joined by Lorraine Kouao, and I apologize if I mispronounced it, so please let me know. A PhD candidate in global and international education and instructor in the Department of Educational Foundations at the University of Hawaiʻi at Mānoa. Lorraine also serves as a graduate research assistant at the Center on Disability Studies at the university. Her research centers on the lived experiences of international students and how those experiences translate into meaningful contributions and sometimes unexpected challenges when students return home. Lorraine brings a wealth of experience in youth development and educational exchange programs. She holds a bachelor's in business management from the University of Central Oklahoma and a master's in international development from the University of Maine. Her current research focuses on the reintegration journeys of international student returnees. While these students often return with critical skills, global perspective, and the potential to support sustainable development in their home countries, many face reintegration challenges that are underexplored in both policy and academic literature. Today, we'll discuss the challenges, explore what supports are needed, consider how local governments and universities can better facilitate the transition home for returning scholars. So whether you're a student, educator, policymaker, someone passionate about global education, peace building, we invite you to listen in. So thank you so much for joining us today, Lorraine. I'm really excited about delving further into this topic. Definitely a genuine perspective that we don't normally think about, because we think about, oh, this is really wonderful. You're gonna, go out, get educated, come back with some of those skill sets to bring forward and assist our community, our country, our nation forward, wherever it may be. But so I look forward to learning more with you today. So to get us started, Lorraine, can you tell us a bit about your own journey and what inspired your research focus on international student returnees?
Yes, thank you for having me in your podcast. So my research focus is on international student mobility. And when I started my PhD journey in fall of 2022, I came with an interest in global education. And I was first interested in the topic of indigenous and decolonial studies. And I wanted to better understand how nations can preserve their local and indigenous practices in the classroom, and keeping in mind that school systems are becoming more interconnected globally. But as I was looking in the literature and also after taking a few classes in global education, my interest shifted toward international students. And I think one of the reasons is because I realized that if we want to preserve our local identities, it's also important to understand how international forces are influencing those traditional values. And I think one way is by looking at international exchange experience and how it's impacting those values. And also, when I was looking at the literature, they have few studies on student returnees. They have more studies on international students, how they come to a foreign country, how they adapt to the culture, how they learn the new language. But after those experiences and when they go back home, they have few studies on how they reintegrate back home and how they take those experiences in their home country. So this is how I start to be interested in the connection between international student experiences and development. And even for me as an international student, I was engaged and involved in different communities of international students. And I started to ask some questions like, how can we take our experience that we have, for example, in the US or abroad, and take that back home in our home country? So this is how my journey started, and I'm continuing to that path of international student returnees.
Thank you. Thank you so much for that background and connecting it to, and I do find a lot of folks tend to, many times we delve into research that we have a passion for, but not solely that, because there's a personal connection to it. And thank you for creating a spotlight for those experiences, which I imagine I look forward to your ongoing contributions. So you've worked in youth development and educational exchange programs. How have those experiences now shaped your own academic perspective?
And so after being involved with those programs, I wanted to see the impact that those activities have on the students. I want to better understand the effect of the learning experiences in the next journey. And it can be like a professional journey or maybe the personal interest. So for example, most recently I was involved with PAC at Israel Center, and PAC is a Pacific and Asian Affairs Council. And this is a non-profit organization that promotes global awareness and prepare high school students to be leaders in the community and also a more interconnected world. In this program, they have different leadership activities on peace building and also community service and cultural exchange. And during those activities, they have some games, like simulation game, where they come with some recommendations or solutions and lesson learned. And after they move on to the college experience, I wanted to see how they take those learning experience into college or maybe the next step in life. This is some kind of experience that I had with students. I was inspired to see how taking a learning experience to the next journey and eventually back home can have an impact in development of the home country. Um, yeah.
Thank you so much. And yeah, actually, Pacific Asian Affairs Council is where we first met. So it was really I don't know if my first one was when they were doing the simulations on the refugees. I forget how many years back it was, but I was very impressed by how just the real life experiences and situations that are happening, and to be engaged in that on a high school level, I'm just yeah in awe. So I know there's a lot of thought process and development that goes into that, and so yeah, so leads us to where we are today. And so shifting a little bit to understanding the returning experience, what are some common expectations international students have when returning home after studying abroad?
I think after we go back home, you have different expectation, and sometimes they can be really positive. Like you go back and you expect to have a better job opportunity because you receive a degree from a foreign country. So this is like a new asset. It's like an advantage for you. So you're expecting to have a great job. You also come back home and you expect to go to something familiar, like to go to the same type of society where you once grew up. And sometimes you can come with some new ideas and knowledge and want to bring a change in your community because you learn so many, you have so much knowledge and maybe you learn so much that you want to pour out on your community. Um, but I think there can be expectation, but it can come with some challenges because our goal might not match with the reality. Because sometimes we tend to ignore that our exposure abroad might have changed our perspective cultural values. We carry so much experiences and knowledge and network that tend to change our viewpoints on our reintegration process. And at the same time, if you left your country for a long period of time, you can come back to a whole country that has completely changed. The people change, the policy change. So this is something that I think most returnees need to keep in mind when they come back home. One example and one challenge can be at the social level. One example can be reverse cultural shock, because you can go back and think that you will go to the same cultural value, but um, they can have some challenge in the process of readjusting to your own home country culture after living in a different culture for a long period of time. For example, the people might look different. the uh, the practice might look really different. And this is because what I said, we come with so much experience and so much intertwined, like experience that we exchange our culture with other cultural environments that change our perspective. The habits and the routines might look different. I mean, maybe sometime I was looking at some like studies where students used to go to the park and it was safe, but maybe back home it might not be the same. So you have to readjust how you go back with your day-to-day routine. I think emotionally, the ultimate result is that the returnee might feel isolated for the first month or the first years because they have to readjust to how to translate your experience abroad to your experience back home now after a few years. It can lead to feeling alone or anxious that can bring a lot of emotional challenges. I think another challenge can be professionally because it can be difficult to translate your foreign skills that you learn abroad to your local expectation. So, for example, language. We can come from a country that maybe speak a different language, can speak French or can speak Arabic or something else, but you went to a country that speak English. So how can you still take those language, so new language competency to translate that in your home country environment? That can be a challenge to readjust to that. Again, for professionally, it can be difficult to find the right job. Like with some people might come back and expect to have higher pay, but if you are living in a low income country, you might have to start with a lower pay first. And that can be difficult for some student returnees who expect to receive already a high pay because of a foreign diploma. So we can come with so many expectations, but we also have to be aware of those kind of challenges, like culturally, with reverse cultural shock and socially to engage in your community and also professionally. So those are something that to keep in mind in this process of reintegration.
No, thank you. Thank you for that. So myself as a just reflecting upon what you shared, I mean, I I mean I immigrated at a young age, so I didn't have the experience of like leaving to study. But I will say in just my own experience of having to like fly back to visit family, there's already been a distinction in just like the dialect, you know. Uh, the longer you're here, you kind of lose that the native your first language that you speak back home. And so, and even if you practice it, it's going to be a different dialect, different tones, different pronunciations, or accentuations that you make. And so there is this kind of leads me to as you were sharing, all I kept thinking about was like the concept of like belonging, and as we go throughout this journey of life trying to figure out our identities, our visions, our passions, what we want to do. And part of that is belonging to a group, a community. And, I'm just trying to look at it from the perspective of someone who has left their home country to study with the idea it's like, oh, this is only be temporary, and then I'm going to come back, and it's not the same. I mean, things are different. And one thing you didn't even touch upon was just like even like gender roles or gender norms. I imagine as so I don't know, just so many
Yeah. Yeah.
things
Yeah.
that I imagine you are considering and delving through your research. But
Yeah.
from your research, what are some of the biggest challenges returnees face when trying to reintegrate into their own home societies? Is it socially, professionally, emotionally? I don't know if there even is a way to like, or is it all kind of the same, or it's person by person?
I think the most obvious one is socially because that's the first thing. Like you said, you talk about culture. That's the most obvious. When you land from the plane, already start to see a difference in the environment. How to readjust to like the practices or the mindsets of the way people perceive things. So this is something that most people, most returnees struggle with reintegration culturally. And then moving on, they are looking for some job opportunities, and professionally is the second one because they come with so many skills and they don't know which one can be applied to the local expectation, and they have to rethink about different ways to apply those skills, for example, language and also um, I mean, technology can be one. In some countries they might not need it, but I think as we become more global, some countries are starting to use more technology, but not more than the others. So how can you use your skill in technology in a way that you learn in the foreign country, and apply that in your home country where maybe they don't need it. They just use like 20% of that, and maybe the other percent is on communication or something else. So you feel like you are like in quotes like wasting what you learn abroad, and come back home with nothing to use, with all those skills that you have, like nothing to apply in your local environment. So I can say maybe those two struggle, it's like cultural challenges, like acknowledging that you change and also the country also change with the policy and cultural values, and also professionally how to translate those global skills in the local environment.
Thank you. Yeah, it's definitely kind of goes back to the whole thoughts of like, the distinction of the constant struggle between like acculturation and assimilation. Because I imagine folks back in the homeland would hope that the person has not changed, but as we have learned, the one thing we can rest assured is there will always be change in our lives, and that can be challenging for folks to kind of adjust to that.
Yep.
Now, are these challenges different depending on the student's country or region of origin or field of study, you think? I don't know if you've delved that deep into the research yet.
Um, I think most of those challenges are the same, but they happen at different levels. So it depends on how the country support the student returnees. Some country might have some policy. This is one reason why I want to do, is one implication of my study to um, talk to some government, like to use my study as a guide for some country to see how they can better support their student, because some country might not really, it might not be a priority to support their student returnees, which can be an asset for them for their development, because we are bringing so much knowledge and so much idea and so much um, perspective that can increase, maybe I don't know, socially they can use it for their own development. Um, so this is one reason why I say it can be different across countries. So some countries support more than the other, but they are still the same challenge. One example can be like socially, for a country that is more into collectivism, family and friends are the main support, where they can support them financially during the first year, or to have them adjust culturally during the beginning of a reintegration process. Another one can be professionally, because the government come with some training on how to readjust to the workforce, and also how to translate those skills to the local workplace. So those are two main difference, but the challenges for my study are still the same across countries.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. I just keep thinking about like the gender norms, which I imagine if, especially if in some places, I think, I think in general, like we tend to already have normally more women when it comes to like education side here in the US. When it comes to like the sciences or even engineering, it's more men. Really, actually, especially in engineering, I find that there's a lot more men than women. So I can only speculate and think about like for those international students who are women who go into engineering here and then go back to their country. I yeah, I
Yeah, it was one theme that surprised me, what that was really interesting when I was doing my lit review. It was the factors of reintegration process. It was interesting to see how reintegration can be predictable in some case. So for example, you talk about the gender. Um, I was looking at the study and it looked like most women tend to have some challenges when they return back home. Because most of those country, those foreign country come with some like human rights, like women rights. Um they have more freedom to do what they can do in the foreign country, especially when they are in the Western region. Um, they can have some speech, they can vote, they can do different things, they can express their voice. But when they return back home, it might not be the same if they are in a country where women rights is not really developed in some ways. So women tend to struggle because after getting those degrees, they return back home and are expected to meet the household need. They have to stay home and also take care about their family. So it feel like the degree that they receive, even though they have a great experience abroad, they might not use the degree for the society they return. So they tend to have those challenges returning back home. Another factor was the age factor. It was when you come back young and when you come back as an adult, like maybe older, 50, 60. The studies show that young students tend to struggle more than the old, and that's because of identity. Um, the like as adults, you tend to be more stable in your identity compared to young students who are still looking for, like trying to find themselves, like, try to have a solid identity. So it tend to be difficult when they go back home when trying to find themselves and
Mm.
also at the same time, we are trying to reintegrate, which can be a challenge emotionally, and you become like an anxious experience for them compared to adults who already have some vision and also goals, like stable goal values that they can
Yeah.
use. Like,
Did you ever look into because I know in some communities being an older adult in their 50s and older, there's a certain level of like respect. And even if you are from the outside, it's like, oh, you're my elder. I need to like pay attention, as opposed to, oh, you're in your 20s or 30s, you still have a lot to learn. There's this perception that even if, let's say, you do have a lot of education and the world experience um and maybe you're not trying to find your identity still, um that because there's these social norms. I don't know if you have, I don't know if there's any like lit review or anything that you came across that, but that factor of, maybe because they were older adults, they might have had it easier because there was already this sphere of like, well, you're honored because you are an older adult as opposed to a younger adult.
from the study, it might be, I haven't seen a good
Yeah.
one data, but from the study, it showed that your cultural norm play a big role in your reintegration process. Like I talk about the woman, the gender issue, it's because in some countries, they might not consider women as like someone who has to be part of the workplace. And this is why it's affecting them when they return back home, because they're expecting to stay home and take care of the family needs. And that might be the same for the age, because in some culture they respect more the older than the younger. So maybe when you return back home, the older might have more priority compared to someone who is in his 20s or early 30s. So for sure, cultural norms play a big role when you come back, because you have to see that what happened abroad might not be the same as what people prioritize back home. And that's one reason why some students are struggling when they reintegrate, because they tend to keep in mind that it might be the same way when they go back home, but they also have to see the complexity, like how can I readjust in some way? How can I translate that and not bring some tension, but still use what I learned back home, in the foreign country, in my home country. And that can be a struggle because it's not predictable. You have to find ways, like strategies, to see how to have a successful reintegration. And it can be so different across countries. Some might prioritize something else and like more into technology, and you went and study art. So how can you still make the most out of your degree that you learn? And other country might prioritize, don't know, like more gender, like men. How can you still use as a woman your degree from abroad? So those are something that we are trying to brainstorm with those studies on reintegration process that can be useful for the student, but also for the country, because they tend to miss that those students come with so much assets that they can use it for the long term.
No, thank you. Thank you so much. Um, have a little more insights into the research since we were kind of delving that way. Have you discovered any recurring themes or surprising patterns? I know you talked a little bit about it, but just want to in the reintegration stories of international students.
I saw that social status can be one, it can be another factor.
Oh, yes. We haven't talked about that.
Yeah, so that's one big factor actually. It's like when you come from a rich family who has a lot of network, or your dad or mom can be part of a government, it's really easy to find a job because they have so much network, so much opportunity for you compared to coming from a family who is in a rural area, might not know anyone, and you will have to depend on the government agency, which might also be difficult because they are not developed. They are not, maybe it might not be a priority, or they might not receive so much funding to support you. So this is something to keep in mind. Like when you come back, um, your social status might have an impact. Another one was a contact that you have with the community back home while you are living abroad. So when you come back home, um, and you had enough contact with your community, um, your local community while you were living abroad, it tend to be easy to reintegrate because you maintain some contact. So it's easy to stay in touch because maybe guess you live for 10 years away from home and you had no contact, and you just call someone from nowhere and say, hey, I'm coming. That might be really different to come back and find some network and try to find your way in your home country. And the last one was the country policy. So if it's a priority for your country to support the student returnees, it might be like really easy for you to find some resources to reintegrate compared to someone like some country where reintegration might not be part of a policy. So those are some things to consider. I also have two main themes. It was a network ties. When I was doing my lit review, it was interesting to see how some students were still keeping the network, the foreign network, while they were staying home, they were reintegrating in their home country. Because it looked like they were still depending on the contact they had when they were living abroad to engage professionally. So most of those returnees tend to be involved in some international NGOs, and they start to stay in touch with the professors abroad to continue, like to have some collaboration in research papers or publications. They still want to keep that international ties when they go back, even though they are at home. And that was interesting to me because I thought reintegrating back home, you might want to just be in touch with your locals, but most of the returnees actually use the foreign network to be more stable and they also want to keep that international aspect in their education. So um, I wasn't really expecting that because it might not be someone's strategy to reintegrate, but it worked for most students because sometimes they were director of some NGOs, or they ended up having some job in international organization. So you never know.
No, no, thank you. Thank you for bringing that new perspective I hadn't thought about. And as you mentioned, the social class, all I could think about is what if there's a caste system? I imagine, you know, at that would be almost difficult to not possible to integrate because you would, even though you come back with all this education and experience, you still come from that lower caste system, and that's gonna just be that basically. So,
And
and
that's
that's where you, yeah. Go ahead. Sorry, sorry.
and I say that's maybe why they tend to rely on the foreign network, because that might be the plan B to, if they don't have some network at home, they can still
Yeah.
use, I don't know, the professors or their mentors who are willing to support them no matter their social status. Because
Yeah.
I think in abroad, they don't really care about your social status. They mostly care about your experience, your skills, which
Yeah.
is an advantage for those students. So they tend to use that. And most of them, some of them succeed from those network
Oh,
and
okay.
tend to pull out this family from the lower caste, because now I think there is a word, it's called remittance. So they send the money that they receive back home to the family and support them with the education they receive. So that can be a plan B for those students.
Well, I know that there is also, I always hear about how one of the things I always hear is that as I've traveled internationally to other places, especially for like um rural communities, like where there's farmland and it's not like there's ample jobs, so people leave for school and they just don't come back. They go to where the jobs are. Uh, and obviously, there's multi layers, whether there's no jobs in their hometown, whether it's a caste system, it's just, and it does shift things around, obviously, and best we can do is just adapt. But yeah, so just kind of thank you, thank you. So little shifting a little bit. So how would you say returnees experience vary depending on the level of institutional or government support they receive? You mentioned that, there's definitely their network supports them, but is there government support or institutional support that's you've learned about out there?
Yes, I saw some country who provide some housing support, some funding, and also some agency who promote research collaboration for student returnees. And that's a way to use what they learn in innovative a project in the development. So um, I have one example. It was in Australia, no, Argentina actually. Um, they were supporting with database for some researchers, like Vietnamese researcher who could collaborate with some local professors. And that was a way for them to find different ways to um, engage maybe like economic development or social development. So that's one example that I found. Um, it was mostly research based and also remittance, where they send the money, the investment that they receive to invest back home. So, for example, it can be entrepreneurship. They create an environment where the student can can have their own business from the remittance abroad. And that's also another example. And it happened across different countries. But those are some main experience that I found, which help a lot for the home country and also for the student to succeed in some way.
Well, thank you. What would you say, what role does almost like, we haven't even said the word like culture shock, but what role does reverse culture shock almost play in this transition? And how well prepared are students to manage it? I mean, it's not, I hear that students, you prepare to go abroad, you join your institution, there's normally an orientation. I know as you're graduating, there's no like, from the school side, I haven't heard of, or maybe there is, preparing folks to come back or people to come back from the home side. So is there any support out there?
Actually, first, we are never prepared for cultural shock. It
Yeah.
always happens. You can just reduce the challenges, but you talk about first the sense of belonging. So that's one aspect, like, to address those sense of belonging and identity.
Mm.
So first, I think it's important to know the realities, like how just to have the student being aware that going back home might come with so many changes, and they need to be aware of that. And sometimes some advisor from the host university, they tend to train the student about the reintegration process, and it can be culturally or maybe know the expectation when they go back home. Also, the service to look for. I know counseling is a big thing here, but if it's not a big thing back home, they can find some alternative to process it during the first month in some way for the student. And another advice is to stay in touch with families and friend back home while living abroad, if you know that you are planning to come back, it might be wise to still stay in touch and also keep some network back home to not be completely lost when you go back and with no contact and no one to support you. So that's something that I think that's one advice from an international student. And another local support can be training. When you go back home, how can your government support you to train like in the workplace and also create even some events, like cultural events, so that the students, when coming back home, can be involved in some way with the culture. And I would say maybe acknowledge that you change, acknowledge your growth, process your experience that you had abroad, and try to relearn the cultural practices when you go home. Be more curious, be more open-minded, and you can still share a lot, but be more open to receive first, and then find some way to share what you learn as a returnees. So maybe that's like some advice I can provide. But
Thank you.
cultural reverse cultural shock can be a really big challenge. Like he
Yeah.
touch on the sense of belonging, can be even grief of your old habits, grief of you know cutting off with so many relationship you had abroad. It can even lead, some studies even show that it can lead to boredom, like you can be bored. It can be
Mm.
so different that because you don't do the same thing, and it might go from fast pace to slow pace, and you might not really be familiar with that anymore. So you have to see how to keep that pace, and maybe you can create your own pace, but just know that it might not be the same. And also identity crisis. You will find that it's like an old version of yourself and to a new one, and feeling confused and out of route. So acknowledge those realities, and with that, try to find different strategies, like being prepared even before coming back home, like by staying in touch, having some training, advising from your university. If they have those resources, it might be important.
Thank you. One of the things that comes to mind, as you talked about, preparing for shifting or changing, uh, we haven't mentioned this, but code switching, you know, about code switching, right? Or there's a certain way, yeah, code switching that we do. So there's a certain way that you will speak to, like, I'm guessing, like your faculty or your professors, a different way that you would speak to your parents or your friends. I imagine your friends from class compared to your friends from, back home. So, um, and I think it's something we pick up as we find ourselves living in multiple worlds. I mean, I was going to just say two worlds, but even within, just to say, different lives, right? The life back you grew up, and then the life of when you went off to school. But then even within that, if you got a job, well, there's a whole nother culture there. So we find ways to figure out the right way to code switch with folks, certain language, certain tones, certain dialects that we may use. And so many times, there's like no class on it. It's just, you just observe and you listen and are like, oh, okay, this is how people interact around here. This is like in Hawaii, people give a shaka sign. Okay, that's like, well, maybe that doesn't, people wouldn't really understand that outside of Hawaii per se. Uh, Maybe the media, because the media, they might, but yeah. So yeah, that code switching I'm thinking of. But I guess I look at code switching, going back to like culture shock. um, I feel like culture shock is at the very beginning of the experience. Code switching is maybe once you've found that sense of belonging, and you can, or the identity we talked about, being able to shift from one to the other. Um, but yeah, it's not, I mean, the different lives can interact and meet, but it's never as though you will ever find yourself acting the same way across all those different spaces or all the different communities that you have.
Yeah,
Um,
you keep going. Even if you return back home after 10 years, there might still be something that you will still have to relearn, and still you might still carry that experience that you had 10 years ago when you were living somewhere in US. And that's why people call hybridity, like it's hybrid. It's something that is embedded in you. It's part of you now and it's hard to remove. It's like a sting. And sometimes it's good to accept that and move on after living for years. And that's even why as international students is we are it's so valuable to be an international student because you carry so much experience and not just in the foreign country, but I met so many international students here. Like I met students from 20 countries and I'm learning so much from each cultural value, like each region, like it can be Europe, but I'm learning different country in Europe and taking those, I don't know, experiences or those knowledge that can become part of who I am like 5 years later. So we also have to see that we are caring so much, and it's not a bad thing. It's just a way to see how to keep it inside, but also living in your local society. Um, they have different training about that, and I think it's or like you said, it's a journey. You keep learning as you go, but yeah, it's good to acknowledge a challenge, but also find different strategies on how to move on.
yes, yes, most definitely. I think I was just reflecting upon how, you know, well, we talked about how change can be uncomfortable for folks. As human beings, we tend to just like routine, and but life is rarely a routine. Maybe there's a couple of routines here or there, but there will be things that change, things that make you uncomfortable. But there are also like opportunities for like growth. And so, having I imagine when you came to school it was to study because you were interested in a specific topic. It was not with like the mindset of like, oh, I'm going to get to meet people from like 20 different countries and all the different. That's more of like the outside the classroom education or knowledge that also contributes to your, you know, your your life as a world citizen and how because I look at it very much as like the more you know about other folks and the more you talk to folks, you start figuring out like, oh, we have various things in common that I never would have thought, growing up back home where I am from. And so I think it's a rare and beautiful opportunity to, and you weave it all together and you don't, and maybe not in the first like 5, 10 years, maybe in 20 years, you know, you meet someone from one of those 20 countries and you have a point of reference of like, oh, where are you from? Oh, I may have shared a meal with someone from your home country at one point, or, so I think that's the beauty of it all. So
And
I'm
yeah, you
no,
just spoke about your podcast, like it's talking about peace building, because I think going back home, we all have those stereotypes about some country. But
mm,
after moving here and knowing and talking with those students from those country, that maybe people can consider them as this, such a that. I start to know them in a real way, and I start to understand where they come from.
yeah,
And then going back home now, I can bring those perspective and open like the space for them to discuss and tell them this is what they are thinking, this is the history, this is how they are living, this is the struggle. And then my community back home can better understand and remove those barriers, those stereotypes and biases that they have about them for years. And that's why it brings some conflict or distance. Like they tend to put some distance with them. But bringing those new ideas and new perspective can break those barriers. Although, for example, it can lower the discrimination that people tend to have against some citizen in a like specific country. So
yeah,
that's why I think it's important also for peace building because we can all come with so much. Like even me coming to the US, I had different perspective from the media, but coming here, I have a totally different experience, and we are not what I used to think, and there are so much positive things that I had and I continue to see. And also I start to learn from students in other country how beautiful culture is. Like we don't want to see it as, like something that is considered bad or don't approach them because it can be dangerous or something. But just be more open-minded. When you come back with those new perspectives, it help your local community to have a more open mindset when they talk about other cultural values. So peace building might be the implication of this study, actually. That's why you bring a
Oh,
good
thank you.
matter.
Thank you. Yeah, no, just one thing that came to mind, I was like, yeah, many times our perception wherever we live in the world, our knowledge of other places of the world are times shaped by what's in the media, whether it's what's in the daily newspaper for people who still read that, or uh, you watch the news, what's in social media, and even when you Google something or you search something, it's the algorithm based on like it'll provide you what they think you might the majority of folks within your country cookie cutter answer. So it doesn't give you the full perspective of what's happening. They always say that like the internet brought the world to people. Yes, but I think once algorithms started going in it, or either that or you really, it's like a needle in a haystack. You really need to know what you're searching for. But the stories, the storytelling that you receive from direct sources of folks who are from these places is something that is truly invaluable. And so thank you for bringing the light to that. um, Now your work connects educational experiences to sustainable development. In what ways can returnees contribute to the development of their home countries, would you say?
So, like I talked about first, the lower the stereotype. That's one
Yeah.
way that contribute to the home country. Another one is how they can bring some knowledge, like promoting some values, like for women rights and human rights. In other countries, they might not have any idea about that or not even see the importance of that. So coming back home and sharing those new values to move as a developed country is key because it might be in 2025, but have women still being discriminated minor sounds wise. So coming with those new perspective can at least open some conversation to see how to promote women rights in the home country. Another one is how students can come with some innovative idea to business investments. I was looking at different study and I think it was India. Some students come back home and bring some technology, they are involved in technology business. They are bringing IT, building some big company about IT in their home country. Um, Entrepreneurship is one for their financial saving from abroad, which can improve the economic development. Another one is expanding the network to research project like I mentioned earlier, having some local professor collaborate with other students abroad, and even you as a returnee is how you stay in touch with your classmates from other countries and collaborate together over Zoom or something and publish a paper or maybe bring some new like innovative idea about a topic. This is some ways to, I think, create some new network between countries. Because in my home country, maybe we might not have some connection with other country, but to me and to that classmate, this alumni, we can create those new type of avenue or network between country simply by doing like a research project. So those are some small steps to build some connection between country, like diplomatic relationship to small things. We don't know how it can lead us, but yeah, like I was thinking about is to bring some social values, like create some innovative business and project in the home country, and then expand the network with diplomatic relationship. Those are some main ways that I saw from my study to promote sustainable development in the home country.
Thank you. Thank you. Um, have you seen some examples of returnees who successfully leveraged their international education for a local impact?
I don't really have some names, but I was involved with
Yeah.
some student returnees, like some international students. I was with different international students at different universities and just staying in touch with them and seeing what they're doing now back home. I can tell that some of them are involved in international business. Some of them were entrepreneur. They're entrepreneur now. They create a business back home. They are, like I talk about technology, some IT companies in their home country. Um, and I was even looking fast forward, what would I want if I go back? And I think for me, I want to bring youth development and leadership back home because I think there has, so first, in my region, we have a higher rate of young population in our community. We have a lot of young from like 20s to the 40s. So those are some opportunity for them to have some youth development program where we can have cultural exchange and learn about entrepreneurship approach, like innovative idea, or maybe also research project, which is another ongoing leadership opportunity that we can have. So there are so many different ideas, but I think for me, if I'm returning, I will focus more on youth development. But we have different ways, different projects that student returnees can be involved when they go back. Yeah.
No, thank you. This is great. You're also like as you're here and getting involved in different experiences, you're collecting ideas and for what you can bring back. So that's really great. That's good to hear. Um, Now, we shift a little to policy and possibly institutional recommendations, what gaps do you see in current policies around international education and return migration?
I can see some gap between the priorities and also expectation. I think some students come with so much, like so many goals, but the reality in the home country or maybe host country do not match what we're expecting. Like on one side, international students, they come with um, those ideas to be involved, like to get the degree and also get as much information, practice and experience in the host country. But with, like different policy, they might not be able um, to do that because they can have different restriction for international students in that country. That can be a challenge, even though they come with all those dreams or ideas or um, values that they want to implement. On the other side, for student returnees, they can come back with those expectations. Like I mentioned, they are looking for like better job opportunity, better pay, and also integrate easily in their home country. But the policy in the home country might not provide those support. So I think there's also like a gap between what the student needs and what the government can offer to those students, which need to be aligned. And that's why we need to better understand those stories from the student, what they need, what they're experiencing, and what are the challenges. And from that, we can find some recommendations, strategies, solution, so that they can meet, like fill this gap that we are having. So yeah.
No, thank you. Um, you touched upon this a little bit, just but want to clarify, are there any thing that what can like local governments or universities or communities do better to support returning students?
Yeah, I think for universities, first, the host university can give some, I would say maybe like workshop to see how they can translate the international experience into the local job market. So I mean by how they can support them to build the resume, the cover letter, and also companies back home that are looking for student returnees or looking for that specific type of skills that they have. So I would say career services is one of them to support the student to build their resume on that. Another one is for alumni network. how can we connect the student returnees in that specific home country with the international students of the same home country while they are leaving before they come back, how they can already connect, like for example, over Zoom like that, to connect with the student returnees from, I don't know, Malaysia, and just try to ask some question and advice. How can I be prepared ahead of time based on your experience? So yeah, that's why I'm talking about alumni network, to stay in touch with those alumni and provide some advice. I think another one can be pre-departure advising, like to have some, maybe some small meetings to meet with international students to talk about the reality of um, student returnees reintegration, what to expect, what are the challenges, what are some opportunities you can look for when you go home, and it can be different across countries. So maybe some professional from each country can provide some type of resources to those students. And that was for university. And for government, I think it's important to provide like funding or even training, and also maybe create an environment where the student returnees can have some entrepreneurship initiative in some way to collaborate with some locals and build some project together in some way that can meet the local need. So those are some different brainstorming that I was thinking, and also based on what previous studies showed from the student returnees, um, that I can maybe share at community level and government level.
No, thank you. That was actually a lot of wonderful insights, and I hope uh, you know I really do hope change comes and
Yeah.
there's better support systems. I mean, especially in higher education, we're always exploring ways to serve students better, and I find that, there's always a lot of support on the transition into college, but then I think when it comes to the transition of beyond graduation, yeah, I get the focus on career readiness and finding that job, but I don't hear much about preparation of I actually I was at a one of my at my alma mater. I remember they did have a junior year, a senior year experience actually. And what I loved about it was that they actually explored different topics beyond, okay, the job, you can go to career services and you can do that. But we are going to have a class, just a one credit class, talked about like managing your money. How do you, you're going to get a job. No one's telling you like how to finance or manage your money. There was conversations about retirement. There was conversations about buying your first car, or, like things that, sometimes we refer to as like adulting, uh, and quote unquote, because we're like, oh, wait, this is what there's nothing that prepares you for that. And so I know across the board, higher ed, not everyone's doing a senior year experience, but I could see where, there's normally, I know that for international students, there's a normal orientation of things you need to know, and then there's the things you need to know as an international student and the paperwork you need to fill out. So I could see where it would be beneficial to be like, hey, as you're about to transition out, these are some things to kind of think about. Because I imagine you get into that routine of like, okay, I have a syllabus, I have assignments, I have to take a test, I have some papers to write, and you do everything that's needed to get to your graduation, but nothing's truly preparing you for beyond that. So
And I think
there's
one reason might be because they think that you are going back to your home country. So that's something that you already know about. Like for international students, when you come to a new country, you will need to know that, for example, there is snow here and it's cold. So you have to be prepared for snow, for that freezing cold I can experience. So that's something that is important for those students because it's so new. The curriculum is different, the language, the people, the culture, the routine. So it makes sense to have a meeting, a workshop for them to talk about those things. But I think when you return, most of those advisors think, oh, you are just going back to your same place where you live for years. And they don't know that those experiences change that students so much when they were living abroad. And they have to consider that based on all those change, transformation, how can they reintegrate back home? How can they use some different resources? And people don't really think about that. And it become a challenge when the student come back and you feel like a complete shock, like how we talk about that culture shock, because even in their mind, they thought that it might be the same, but it might be different if you live after like 10 years in a different country. You might not come back to the same environment. That's for sure. So I think some people miss that. They think because I just think it's the same place, but it's not the same person. And maybe it's not the same type of policy that we had 5 years ago that changed. And also the people who live there also change. So many change that we need to consider and find some resources for that.
Yeah. I think, I mean, kind of going back to the whole change always happens, whether we want to or not. And I think, I mean, something you said early on that kind of, those friendships, and I have a my perception of friendships has evolved over time, of realizing that a best friend doesn't necessarily need to be someone that like I talk to on an everyday basis. I look at nurturing the relationships that I have through these conversations, through storytelling, through getting to know each other, through sharing a meal, through there was an activity we participated in together. There's memories there, and so I look at those relationships because I think it can be different dependent upon also people's perception of what is a friendship or what are best friends or what are close relationships. Because like I can go 6 months, years, and then reconnect with someone, and then we just start off where we left off last time. Oh, let's just catch up. What are some new stories? Oh, and I think and those are the relationships that I so value nowadays, a couple decades into this world. Because I just can't with the every day. Like life gets busy, whether it's you had to leave your home country to study abroad somewhere, whether, and life happens. You make other circle of friends, you eventually if you decide to build a family, if you decide to have kids, it's like you're there's still only 24 hours to a day, and hopefully 8 of those hours are going towards sleep. So you really only have like 16 hours left, and if you're working or going to school, most likely like 8 or 10 of those hours are going toward that, or majority of it. So yeah, so there's only so much time in the day. And so yeah, it's something that you mentioned about friendships and relationships that we built. And so I think shifting our perspective into what is the are the relationships or friendships that I will value, that can also I look at it as also like it doesn't cost stress to me. Like if I'm going to be stressed out about, oh, I've not talked to my best friend today, that we talk every day, then that's a problem, I think, as far as like, you know, managing life. And but yeah, sorry, just something that lingering.
Yeah, it's aging. It's like, and I'm thinking about student returnees because they have two challenge. Maybe you might have one if you leave to your own country, trying to figure out those change. It's the aging process of like understanding how to deal with friendship as we grow older and we are becoming adult, how to understand, job. But I think for the returnees, they have this responsibility, like this to think about, but also another challenge, which is cultural challenge, to see how to understand this whole thing in their home country, which might have different perspective about that. Like they can have like how to age in US can be completely different to how to age in Kenya. So they also have to like think about those different ways, like see, oh, friendship might look different from 20 years old to 30, but it's another thing to think about when it's like from US culture to Kenya culture, which is another challenge. So yeah, you bring a good point about that.
I, I'm loving this conversation because everything you say just reminds you of different things. And another thing that kind of just came to mind to me was I sometimes share how like we as human beings, we individually to ourselves are our own worst critic. And so we're always unfortunately trying to strive for this like perfectionism. And eventually, hopefully, as we get older, we start realizing like, no, let's be kind to each other. It's okay. Nobody else knew exactly what that was supposed to look like. It was just in your mind. But along that line, what I'm getting at is one of the things that I have found is in order to pursue your own education, to move forward in life, professionally, career wise, especially because I find this in a lot of cultures where you know, we're taught to uh, honor, respect the sacredness of our culture, of our community, of our families. And so if we can't be there for the milestones, so a birth, a baby shower, a wedding, a birthday, someone's funeral, we feel as though, well, we've just really, we're really hard on ourselves, especially the funeral aspect of it. Like that auntie or that grandparent or parent who was there for me, devoted so many years of their life, and that guilt trip, that's what I'm getting at. The guilt trip that we have of not being able to physically just be like, oh, let me get in the car, let me just take a quick plane to go, because it's not a quick one. It's like however many hours, how many ever stops to be there for. And so there's this guilt trip that I don't know if your research goes into this, but I can only imagine just from my own experiences of sometimes you feel, going back to the self judgment, that you almost have to be selfish to be like, oh no, I need to focus on this rotation, this research, this paper, because that's why I'm here, and kind of make sense of it that I think this is what, you know, my grandma, my grandpa would have wanted me to do. Like, they sacrificed all those years so we could be where we are. But yeah, that like guilt trip and selfishness, like I don't know if those emotions at all kind of weave into your research as a returnee, but yeah, just,
I
and if
think
they don't, that's quite okay. But it's one of those things that just kind of came to mind as we were talking.
that's a good point. I think it's more like personal, so it might depend on the student,
Yeah.
um, different values, or also the family if they really care about that or no. So it might just depend personally. But I think as returnees, we are already home. So most of the family are already grateful they came back, or maybe not, I don't, but they can start to devote the time to the family and start something new again with them. Um, which I don't think they should be guilty because it's like a
No,
gift.
no. Well, I can imagine based on so if they're already returned, I was looking at it from the perspective of what they may have missed while they were away, and simultaneously the relationships that they've nurtured now while they were away and what's happened. So you're living in these multiple worlds, I guess. That's but I guess it is more of a moral develop dilemma for on the individual level. But yeah, just one of those things that kind of came to mind.
It's to be kind to yourself sometimes. Like,
Yes,
all right,
yes,
you had some mistake, it's okay. You just learn and move on.
yes, yes. Good attitude. So shifting a little to, well, we talked a little bit about, already talking about identity and belonging. How do you returnees navigate questions of identity, belonging after living abroad for an extended time, as well as like in your view, how can these students serve as peace builders or cultural bridges in their home communities? I mean, we talked a little bit about this, but I just in case there's anything additional that you want to add to that.
Yeah, I just think it's more about identity. We talk about identity crisis during the reverse cultural shock. So it's mostly how to understand who you have become and then try to re-engage in your local community. I just want to add one quick point about what I found is like sometimes you can come returnees can come with some tension with a local. And it was a really interesting point because I didn't know that you become a foreign when you come back. Like you are national, but you can still look like a foreign to the local community because you have changed. Like you think differently. You have different mentality. So people might not understand you and you might not understand them. So sometimes it can have some tension, especially when you want to bring like a new, like movement in your home country. It's like you are so passionate and you came with so much and you say, I want to make a change. I want to my community to involve, like to evolve, to grow. And I will bring this project for them, like to have a pump, like water pump that can filter the water in the village and coming all those great projects, but people might not receive it in a good way. Like it might not be what you expect. And you can think, oh, I want to make their life better. But you also have to sit down with them and talk and find ways, not just come as a, they call the white man. Like it was a study, like the white men who come and just colonize the country. And that's how they see you as someone who might come and make a change and colonize with those Western ideas. So that's why it's important to see how to translate those Western ideas into local values because you don't want to copy and paste because that might not work. And people might come with some disagreement and tension and they might have different stereotype about that. So I think in the process, when you are readjusting to like sense of belonging, identity, you have to understand too that you are in a country that values something specific and you have to sit down, understand, maybe relearn that if you forgot and try to navigate what you know now as a new person, as a new scholar, and collaborate together, not just think that you are the one who can change the world. You can, but you need people to support you and to give you a different lens of what your project might mean in the local society. So yeah, that's what I want to add in this point.
Thank you. Um, so this kind of goes along with my follow-up question of like, what advice would you give to current international students who are thinking ahead to their return home? Uh, you just kind of answered it, but if there's anything else and I imagine, I mean, for you as well, like, I don't know if you're planning to return home or not, and that will be something you'll decide in a few years when you're done. So almost as you're doing this research, this rotation, you're like, this is almost your own healing, your own preparation for you. So you know what to do if you so decide to follow this path.
I think those articles were kind of my way to get advice because I went, oh, that's how they live, so I can learn from them. But I just put a few like some small advice is to
Yeah.
maybe reconnect with your people, like your community back home while you are living abroad. Like don't completely cut all the connection.
Yeah.
It's important to stay in touch with your family, at least, and friends, and also, I don't know if you have some organization you are looking for back home, it's a good time right now to connect. Like we can even start few years ahead, and also be aware of the realities that are happening back home. So maybe check the news, what is going on back home, what are some new policies that they implemented in the society, who is a new governor, all those things like yeah, are
Yeah.
important. What's going on? And
Yeah.
the other
Definitely.
side, yes, and on the other side, I think it's good to maximize your experience abroad because you don't know. Like I was talking about how they use most of their network abroad to reintegrate. So maybe stay in touch with some professors or some students, some classmates who are leaving. You never know, you can start a project with them for an international NGO together or if like a research project or something else. But build a strong community while you are living abroad and also on the other side, have a stay in touch with the people back home and start to understand what is going on in the world. Like see the pattern, what is going on and what can happen in the future and like in 2 years and what have implications for like the job you are looking for or for the project you are planning to implement back home. So just do a lot of research and stay in touch. Yeah, that's my advice.
No, thank you. And we kind of touched upon this other one too. What would you say to policymakers or educational institutions who want to better support returning students? I know we talked briefly brainstorming, like maybe there's a class or some kind of exit interview kind of thing. But I wonder if there is something in the research or something you have in mind specifically.
Yeah, maybe another one is to educate themselves about what the returnees need. Like we all come with different goals. So maybe I don't know, it can be like surveys or maybe stay in touch or connect with the host university so that they can get all those information from the students who are planning to come back so they know how to serve them like better knowing all the reality because they cannot meet all the expectation, but at least they have some themes, like different like main need that they have when they return. Because I think some country want to support, but they just don't know how. And other country just don't care. So yeah, we just have to have a good balance to see how to serve the student and also teach the country who don't have that as a priority, that how important student returnees are, like to see the experience they had, which can be really valuable for the society. So I guess educating themselves is key.
Well, thank you. Um, I wonder if you have any um, final message you'd like to share with our listeners about the importance of supporting international student returnees, but also, just there's the future student mobility and reintegration. Yeah, I mean, we're just words of wisdom that you provided so many wonderful uh, hints already.
Yeah.
But yeah, I know you still have a couple more years till you're officially done with the research and your dissertation. But uh, thank you. But yeah, please.
Yes, I just feel like we have few studies on student returnees, so it's really important to acknowledge the importance of those students who go back because they can contribute to the development of international student mobility, not just international students who live abroad, but student returnees also play a key role in international student mobility. So understanding the challenges and opportunities that those students can have is key for the development of the home country, but also host country for like diplomacy, foreign diplomacy, how to stay in touch with those students and building some strong connection with different countries through international students. So it's key to understand those complexity and see how to support them and contribute to the development, the global development. So that's my last words of wisdom, and I'm looking forward to see where this research is going. I'm still collecting data right now, so I'm looking forward to hear all the stories and insight of those student alumni and see how it can turn out into policy or recommendations. But yeah,
This is
but
a qualitative study, I believe, right?
yes, it's an interview.
Oh, interview. Okay. So you are in the process of doing those interviews right now, is what I'm hearing.
Yes, yeah. It will be over Zoom with some student alumni who are already back home. And it will be,
Oh, okay.
yeah. I don't know if I'm talking about that, but it's a project that I'm working with East West Center to
Okay.
alumni students to collect those experience that they have and how they took the leadership experience here into the reintegration process back
Well,
home.
what has the response been?
I haven't, I'm still collecting, so I'm in the process of reaching out and
Okay. Okay.
but it will be over Zoom and mostly interview, no survey. Yeah, it's mostly
Yeah. That's so exciting. Sorry, now I'm thinking of other questions. uh, from because a lot of because when it comes to research, there's the so there's what's stated, but then there is the in between. So, because my own research looks into interpretive, and so because there's things that people will say, but then there's the in between what people aren't saying or what the nonverbals don't say. And I wonder if your research is looking at that at all, especially with like different cultures and different mannerisms. I imagine there's such a deeper
Yeah.
context there.
Yeah, actually, that's one of like some limitation because every research we are not perfect, and one
Yeah.
limit for me because I'm doing over Zoom, I'm not able to actually see how they are living back home. So whatever
Mm.
they tell me, we be the story about we be
Yeah,
the I
that's
won't see
true.
in between, but just to lower those challenges, I guess it's like to focus on one country. So my committee member were really helpful to just give me some advice, and they told me to just focus on a specific country because I'm looking for GDF. I don't know if you know this program at East West Center. They have a
Graduate degree fellows.
yeah, they tend to come here for some leadership opportunities and community service. So they are mostly intentional about the experience.
Mm.
That's why I chose this program. And in this program, we have students from all over the place, like from even from the US and Southeast Asia. But I have to focus on one, so I'm trying to see the top, like the student who come from um, the country that have the most student alumni too, so I
Okay.
can have
Yeah,
participation.
yeah, have better results. It makes sense. Yeah, no, most
Even
definitely.
in the country, they have different ethnic groups, so that can be another thing to look at, like, to see how it's changing across ethnicities. So there's so many factors to look at, but just narrowing down is my strategy to just
Yeah.
size. But I still have to accept that my research will not be perfect. I have some limitation that I acknowledge in my dissertation. So yeah, so that's
But
it.
what I am hearing though is you're creating a framework, which once you're done, if you were so interested or there are other organizations that would love to learn further about this, you can use this framework within other countries or other groups. And so that's amazing. Thank you. Thank you for spearheading that. Thank you for, as they say in when you're trying to figure out your dissertation, like what can you contribute? Something that's different, something that is not out there. And so thank you for, thinking outside the box and bringing this unique perspective that many folks haven't. So thank you, Lorraine, for sharing your insights, your research, your passion with us today. It's clear that the experience of international student returnees go far beyond the classroom. They're deeply human journeys that intersect with identity, belonging, and the desire to make a meaningful impact back home as well. So as we've heard, while studying abroad opens doors to new knowledge and perspectives, the return home is often where the real work begins. So reintegration is just a personal process. It's collective opportunity, one that calls for communities, institutions, governments, everyone, to build bridges that support returnees as agents of positive change. So here at Peacebuilding Initiatives, we definitely believe that empathy, dialogue, and inclusive policies are foundations of stronger, more connected societies. So today's conversations reminds us that international students isn't just about global movement, it's about what we bring back and how we carry it forward in service of others. So to our listeners, thank you for joining us. If this conversation resonated with you, we invite you to reflect on how we can better support students in their return journeys and how each of us can contribute to creating welcoming, supportive communities wherever we are. Until next time, stay curious, stay compassionate, and keep building peace one conversation at a time. Thank you all.